fiber is finally making a comeback because there has been such an emphasis on protein for so long. Protein has obviously all these amazing benefits, but when you don't have fiber, you don't really get all of the same benefits of if you were to combine it with protein and fiber. Have you heard of eat until you're 80% full? Most people don't want to eat that way because it just feels like you're limiting yourself. You're not actually able to eat until you're satisfied. But when you eat fiber-rich foods, you do truly get to feel like you are satisfied. Like you don't need to keep eating. Even though the fiber is very important, like what we just talked about, protein's the anchor. If you don't have that, it doesn't matter how much fiber you eat. You're not going to feel full and satisfied for very long. You're not going to have the micronutrients your body needs. You're not going to keep the muscle that your body needs as well.
So how much fiber should the average woman aim for on a daily basis?
And I do recommend sticking to meals and not grazing and not having snacks. I recommend grams per meal, so about grams per day.
Hey guys, and welcome back to the Thick Thighs Save Lives podcast. I'm Kelsey, and I am delighted to be on today with Autumn Bates. Welcome, Autumn.
Thank you so much for having me.
You know what? I'm going to dive right into it because the hot topic for so long has been protein, protein, protein. And in my house, it's become kind of this weird make fun of me kind of a thing that my partner does. It's like, don't forget your fiber and get your fiber. And he's like, nobody knows what that even means, Kelsey. Because in the protein world, we're like, chicken, steak, eggs, we have things that we could easily rattle off. But fiber has finally entered the chat in one of the mainstreams of this should be a staple in your diet, which I'm so glad to hear about. But why are we suddenly hearing more about fiber?
I think that fiber is finally making a comeback because there has been such an emphasis on protein for so long. So protein has obviously all these amazing benefits. It helps to make you feel so full and satisfied, which is why it is such a great tool for sustainable fat loss. But when you don't have fiber, you don't really get all of the same benefits of if you were to combine it with protein and fiber. So fiber helps with a lot of the downsides of protein. If you were to just eat protein, then you could get constipated, which is something that a lot of people have experienced. And that feeling of constipation and bloating and gas is not comfortable. So a lot of people are looking for solutions because of that. But on top of that, protein also takes about 30 minutes to really kick in to feel full and satisfied because it has the hormonal response on our satiety. So it raises certain hormones that like peptide YY, CCK, GLP-1 that tell our brain we're full and satisfied. But it takes about 30 minutes for our brain to get that message. Fiber acts a little quicker on our satiety, where as soon as it enters our stomach, it essentially stretches out our stomach, and that signals to our brain more immediately that we're full and satisfied. So especially if you struggle with hunger, balancing the fiber with the protein helps to kind of cover all your bases of hunger and feeling full and satisfied. But also on the flip side, protein also kind of buffers the downsides of fiber. Fiber doesn't protect from muscle loss. It doesn't help save your metabolism while you're losing weight. It also doesn't make you feel full for really longer than about an hour. So that's where they combined are just amazing.
Combine a powerhouse. But if you're leaving one out, you're
Yeah.
really not maximizing the protein you're taking in. What I've had the experience with most women is that they have neglected protein for a significant amount of time, or prioritizing protein, I should say, for a significant amount of time within their life and their overall diet. And then they add a whole bunch in. And I think what's the mistake that most people make when they add a whole bunch of protein in, but they don't also add in the fiber at the same time?
I mean, I would say a lot of mistakes. There's even just starting off with the fact that I think women struggle with the idea of how much protein really is enough protein. I think that's the first big issue of just even knowing that you need to eat a substantial amount of that on your plate, or even the quality of the sources that are coming in, like how peanut butter is not the same type of protein as what's in chicken or steak or eggs or dairy, or even beans, or I've seen for a long time people think broccoli can be counted toward your protein needs. So there is that whole, like, other side of the equation, but I think that kind of errs on the side of people either under eating protein, thinking that they're eating enough, or just, eating the wrong types and not seeing the benefits. But then if they truly are getting a protein, the kind of, like, way it swings to the opposite side where it can be kind of a mistake is if they're getting enough, it's often from the wrong sources that maybe they're high quality in air quotes in terms of the diaz score, but they're still ultra processed foods. So things like protein bars that are going to lack fiber,
Yeah.
things like I just recently saw protein pretzels and how that's like a really popular
Interesting.
thing right now.
I have not seen
Uh,
that.
oh my gosh, yeah. I go to a
They'll
gym
do
that is
anything.
yeah, I know. I go to a gym that's mostly just like college kids, and they just sell like all of the protein snacks, like protein chips, protein Pop Tarts, protein pretzels, like all of the different things. And you can get a substantial amount of protein from those things, but it's still just not really viewing it in the right way. It's still an ultra processed food. And even though it has protein, most people are still going to eat well beyond their body's needs because it doesn't have that same impact as like the whole food protein will. And it's also missing the fiber. So it's not taking it from that whole approach, which is where just singling out like one nutrient can be so problematic because you can isolate down any nutrient, carbohydrates, fats, protein. And if you just have that thing, you're not actually getting all of the study benefits that we're seeing from eating things like a high protein diet.
Yeah, that's such a great point because I think a lot of, what I see is a lot of people when they start to implement, they go towards immediate supplementation, whether it's in the form of shakes or bars or whatever, and then it really misses that other component. And I think one of the biggest things that we've done in the health and fitness industry, specifically nutrition, is isolated these macronutrients and been like, this is the one. Everyone go get this just by itself.
Hmm.
And it's like, well, that's not how it works within your body as it doesn't work in a vacuum. And you've said that fiber is the missing piece in most weight loss advice. What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, it changes over time because I would say even 5 years ago, protein was the missing piece for a lot of people,
True.
where women, especially, like, when I was meeting with women 5 years and earlier, they were really great about getting their vegetables, like, getting some type of beans or vegetables, like, that actually was not an issue. Women tend to not have as much of a hard time getting, like, fiber-rich foods without really specifically emphasizing that, because they tend to enjoy it more. But the
Mhm.
protein for a lot of women does tend to be the missing component. It really just comes down to like what is the missing component for that person at that time in their journey. And
Mm.
that is something that right now is just becoming more of a trend now that people have become aware of the importance of protein and actively are trying to eat more of it. Some of the other tools have started to be forgotten. So it's not that any one of these is like the best, although I still would argue that protein does have a vastly superior like edge over a lot of the other tools, but it's the tools we leave behind when we start to implement everything else.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it because as long as when you start to implement some of those like whole foods protein, you start to naturally introduce more fiber and just get that whole foods approach where we can see the benefits rather than, whittling it down to like we are just having this. I do think fiber gets a bad rap too when it comes to like gross foods, I guess.
Mm.
When people start to think like, "Well, I don't wanna have that." Could you just rattle off some, like, foods that we could be looking for that we could implement into our diet that would help us reach our fiber goals?
When you say growth, do you mean like
Gross. I mean, like,
oh
people are like, "Ugh,
gross,
gross,"
like
like, I'm like,
icky, like
"Oh, those
ew.
foods are gross." Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. I know, like, especially, my first thought was, like, bran muffins, like, something like,
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah,
disgusting
you're
and
like,
doesn't actually sound really
"Uh-uh."
great. Yeah. No, there's actually some really big, like, fiber superstars, things that are so easy to add a lot of fiber and that actually taste really great, and things that probably a lot of people are already eating, just maybe not enough of. Things like avocado, actually surprisingly very, very high in fiber. Artichoke hearts is one of my favorite sneaky ones where you only need about like 3 to 5 artichoke hearts and you get 10 grams of fiber, which is a lot of fiber. And it's mostly soluble fiber, which is the type that is best for pretty much every health benefit you can think of for fiber. Soluble is the best option. Raspberries, another fantastic one, blackberries. A lot of the berries are pretty high in fiber. Cacao nibs is another sneaky one. Chia seeds. These are things that are pretty easy to add in without either with enjoying the food, like something like cacao nibs. I am obsessed with cacao nibs. I think they taste awesome and are so good on like smoothie bowls or something.
Yeah. It's
Or
like
you
chocolate.
don't, I know exactly. Or you just don't even really like notice it's there, like chia seeds. You can blend that up and put that in something like a smoothie and you don't know it's there. And or edible basil seeds. That's actually another sneaky one where you only need, I think it's 1 or 3/4 tablespoon for 10 grams of fiber, if I remember that correctly. Like they are so jam packed with fiber. So you don't necessarily have to have and in fact, some of the things that we might normally think of as high fiber foods actually aren't as high in fiber as we would assume. So typically people would assume like grains, like that's the
Yep.
first thought, like, oh, like I should eat more whole wheat or like rice or oatmeal. They do have some fiber in it, but it's actually nowhere close to the amount you would get to something like artichoke hearts. Black beans is another one of my favorites. Black beans are very, very high in fiber. Foods that are actually more nutrient dense and more supportive, if a weight loss goal is somebody's goal, more supportive of a weight loss goal because they aren't as blood sugar spiking.
Thank you so much. I know that seemed like, you were in the space and you're like, there's a vast variety of foods that have fiber in it. But I know that like in initial conversations, it's like, well, Kelsey, I don't like spinach. I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, well, you don't have to have spinach. Like,
Yeah. And it's actually not even the best fiber source.
I was like, I wasn't saying you had to have that in every meal. Like
Yeah.
that was not the end all be all. There are so many different foods that we could use to implement. And some of those are sneaky, like chia seeds, like my 4-year-old, like she has them in her yogurt all the time. So
Yeah.
she's kind of become like bougie about it. She's like, does that have my chia seeds in it? And I'm like, you are the only 4-year-old that is asking the smoothie guy if your bowl has chia seeds in it. Like,
That's good. That's great.
it's it's so funny because, like, what you normalize truly becomes, like, your kid's entire world, and as soon as we start to normalize and that's why I use gross too, because, like, some of these thoughts around vegetables, around fiber, around some of the
Mhm.
macronutrients that are really like awesome and they taste good and they're great for our bodies. Like this idea that they're kind of like gross or they're difficult to add into your diet is kind of like sometimes we have to check where that idea comes from because I'm sure that a lot of the foods that you just rattle off, people are like, I like raspberries. I didn't
Yeah.
know like that could help me meet. Like I love artichoke hearts. Like I definitely can add them in, or
Mhm.
even like just snack on them sometimes. Like that
Mhm.
is those are things that we can easily add in. Um, how will increasing your fiber naturally help someone eat less?
So fiber, it helps to reduce hunger at the early stages of after eating a meal. It literally stretches out the stomach, which triggers to your brain that you're full and satisfied. And that helps to like fill that satiety gap until your protein and your fat can help to do the heavy lifting from a hormonal perspective. So it's really great at helping to boost satiety in the short term and make it so that you don't have to have you heard of the different tools people talk about nutrition probably where it's like eat until you're 80% full because then you can allow like your hormones to catch up and you'll eventually feel full and satisfied. Most people, like myself included, don't wanna eat that way because it just feels like you're limiting yourself. You're not actually able to eat until you're satisfied, but when you eat
Mm.
fiber-rich foods, you do truly get to feel like you are satisfied, like, you don't need to keep eating, but you're, like, still getting that essentially, like, 80% rule gap too.
Yeah, because it helps you catch up. I mean, that's such a hard one too because when we're trying to unpack, so many people have like, issued like a poor relationship with food and trying to figure out when you're full actually again when wherever you are on that journey and trying to listen to your body and then you're like okay well 80% you're like geez I don't even know I haven't
Yeah,
even caught up to when I'm actually full, and then 80% and then I'm like, "Well, now I didn't do it," and I'm 20 minutes later, I'm just still hungry, so now I've cleaned up and now I'm opening things up.
yeah.
So it's helping you reach that quicker and actually acknowledge that you are actually full.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. There also are a little bit of long-term satiety perks that fiber can have. It's nowhere close to something like protein, but it does actually help to raise GLP-1 a bit because it gets fermented in the fiber gets fermented in our colon. That releases these short-chain fatty acids that are then absorbed by our body, and that therefore also helps to raise GLP-1. So it does have some like long-term benefits too, but it's definitely like the majority of how it actually really helps is that short-term impact to fill that gap between when protein and fat really start to kick in.
We're hitting all the newest buzzwords today because GLP-1 is a hot topic. We've done a couple episodes
Yes.
on it, but I think there's been so much misinformation around GLP-1s that we were like, we need to unpack this. We need to bring around a couple of experts
Yeah.
and just really talk to people about it because I think that there was just so much misinformation about what even GLP-1 is or how it interacts with your body, how people are using it, how it's gotten a bad rap in so many ways. It's such an interesting, so for you to throw it out is just like, this is something we are already working with in our body.
Mhm.
This isn't just this outside buzzword. Like,
Yeah.
people who have been involved in nutrition have been looking at this for a bit.
Yeah, I mean, even in just basic undergrad nutrition, like when I was an undergrad, you learn about these satiety hormones. You learn about the different satiety, fullness, and hunger hormones, and GLP-1 is part of it, including like peptide YY and CCK, which I don't think get as much of the good reputation as GLP-1 does because there's not really like a medication around it right now. But they all do work like in conjunction with one another to help get all of the benefits of feeling full and satisfied without, the downsides of the many of the GLP-1 medications.
Yeah, for sure. We're going to take a quick break to get you a whole bunch of friends.
Do you like Friends?
We have about 80,000 amazing women friends, more than that, in one space that can't wait to cheer you on in your fitness journey.
Whether it's lifting you up, getting you motivated to get to the gym, complimenting your outfit, we have gathered 80,000 of the best women on the planet and put them all in one place for your friendship pleasure.
Honestly, I would just like pull out some of the amazing quotes from the group because, like, you would think groups like this, you're like, I don't know. And I'm telling you, once you enter in the door, the virtual door, because you can do this anywhere, that you will find the most supportive community you have ever known. And it's called Stronger Together by CVG. You can find us on a Facebook group. It's a closed group, women only, and you got to get in there.
Get in there. It's so inspiring. Join us today.
So I know that the term fiber training has become popular. What exactly is this? How do we implement this? What's going on here?
Yeah, it's funny because it's kind of like a very old school nutrition thing as well, where essentially like your gut microbiome feeds off of fiber, and if you aren't used to eating a lot of it, and then you suddenly give your gut microbiome a ton of fiber, it's like holy moly, there's just like a Thanksgiving buffet of fiber. I'm just going to eat all of it and fart out all these little bubbles that then cause a bunch of gas and a bunch of bloating and a bunch of uncomfortableness. And that's what can happen if you just like really, really load up on fiber. And if you are used to having essentially none of it, it can just make you feel so bloated, so like painfully uncomfortable. I had a history of
Yeah.
bloating, so I'm very familiar with how uncomfortable this can feel. So the idea of like fiber training is really just easing into eating more fiber to not give your microbiome like this massive buffet that it can then just ferment and cause your belly to feel like it's exploding, but instead just slowly like trickle it in and ease your body into this higher fiber state. So the like standard type of protocol is to increase your fiber by about like 5 grams per day, or at least like 5 grams every few days to see how your body's responding and just like allow it to settle. And then you can increase it again by another 5 grams from there. Really, the goal should be, and what most like fiber or just like wellness researchers are finding, that we want to aim for about 30 to 50 grams of fiber per day. So for a lot of people, obviously that's about 10 grams of fiber per meal. And that would be adding about like a half serving of one of these fiber superstars per day for every 3 days. So, like, for example, raspberries, if I remember off the top of my head, I think it's 1 1/4 cup is 10 grams. So, like, about three, like, let's say a half cup ish, a little over a half cup would be about 5 grams of fiber. You just add a half cup of raspberries to one of your meals and keep that consistent for like 3 days. And then from there, add on like those 2 artichoke hearts to your salad later in the day or to like whatever chicken dish you're having or something. And that would be another 5 grams until you then reach that total of 30 to 50 grams for the day.
See, I love how you broke that down because sometimes the fiber goals can feel overwhelming, and but when you're like half a cup of raspberries, like to start to add that in, to start to implement, that's not necessarily overwhelming. I'm so glad you brought up the bloating and just the gassiness because, one of this happened with one of my best friends. She's like, I just can't have that much because every time I do it, she's like, you don't understand. I'm so gassy. I'm so bloated. Like I can't even go around and I'm like, "Well, you're going, like, 0 to, like, 100 every
Hmm.
time you do this, and then you're getting the same results over and over, and then you're like, oh, I gotta add this back in and go back to 100," and it's like, you specifically need to ease into this, as
Yeah.
most people who might be deficient and might not be meeting, like, anywhere close to their fiber goals.
Yeah, and there is a case to be made as well that, depending on the person, they might need to work on gut healing first because
Mm,
there is an aspect of that where some people's guts just can't handle it yet because they might have just like SIBO, like which is small intestine bacterial overgrowth. They might have bacteria in the wrong places. Like you're not really supposed to have much bacteria in your small intestine. And so when that happens with something like small intestine bacterial overgrowth, when the fiber comes through, the fiber is munching on, or the bacteria is munching on that fiber when it reaches the small intestine rather than later on in the colon. So you're getting this bloating that's happening instantaneously in a much more sensitive part of the GI tract. And that's where it can be really, really, really painful, cause things like acid reflux, all these issues. So, there are some people who do definitely have to be careful with that and might even need to completely eliminate fiber for a while and focus on gut healing strategies first, then slowly reintroducing it after they've handled something like SIBO. And women are actually really prone to things like SIBO because it tends to occur with either high sugar intake, high stress intake, snacking, like grazing. Grazing is a big instigator of that because it doesn't ever allow our body to fully turn on our gut cleaning process called the migrating motor
mm.
complex. So then we can keep that bacteria in the wrong places rather than flushing it out, which eventually can lead to something like overgrowth. So women can definitely be prone to that. And if they find that even with using this like more fiber training approach where they're slowly easing into it and they're still feeling so horrible, then that is something that might need to be considered.
That's such a great point. Thank you for bringing that up. I think that's going to ease a lot of women's concerns around that. If you really have experienced that when you've tried to add more fiber into your diet and kind of like what that snacking looks like. And I know that you have talked about this in your book a bit, which we are going to talk about
Mhm.
as well, just so people can hear more from you throughout the episode. But how does fiber help regulate blood sugar? And what role does that play in controlling that afternoon snack, that we were kind of talking about, that those afternoon late night cravings, that kind of a thing where we're just kind of snacking all the time?
Yeah, kind of in two different ways. One in helping to prevent hunger, like being one of that key component with the protein, the fat, and the fiber. And as we don't feel as hungry, that does help us to prevent snacking. Very, very big, powerful tool. But on top of that, from the blood sugar regulation, fiber literally acts as sort of a net to carbohydrates where our body can't just quickly access the carbs in our food when fiber is present. So it slows down how quickly our GI tract is actually able to literally physically pull out the carbs and the sugar from our meal and then lead obviously into our bloodstream. So that causes more of a stable release. So you don't get these huge spikes. Because every time we get a
Mm.
huge spike, our body, it's not good for us. Like our body wants to quickly bring that back down. So as a result, it can overcompensate, lead to a blood sugar crash. And it's when we get these blood sugar crashes, when we have more of that immediate sensation that we need to eat something right now, specifically sugar. Like we feel mood swingy, we feel low energy, we feel really, really cranky, maybe faint. Those are big signs that it's a blood sugar crash from having a previous blood sugar spike. And that's where fiber helps to temper that, helps to make it so you don't get this big spike. So it's more slow and steady. So you don't get the subsequent crash.
Oh man, I know that so many of us have felt that just in the afternoon of like, I have to have something very sugary right now. And we kind of equate that to just historically in diet culture, some kind of a moral failure, some kind of a willpower failure
Hmm.
when we actually start to look at your overall nutrition, your overall diet, what you've had that day, what you have had that week. We can really riddle that down to like, this isn't this isn't a willpower, this isn't a moral failure on you. There are certain things that we can do during the day to prevent that from happening.
Yeah, there's definitely biology and then there's psychology. When it comes to nutrition, I would think that about 80% of the psychological component of nutrition is solved if we can just address the biology first.
Yeah, oh my god, I know. Let me get them all together.
Yeah.
Do you believe that there are certain ultra-processed foods that can override our natural fullness signals? And what makes those foods so different from the kind of like whole food approach, sources that we're looking for?
Well, essentially, any ultra processed food is going to have not as good of a impact on our satiety as the whole food version. It's especially true when it comes to carbs and fats. Those just aren't going to be as satiating as protein. And so when we then take a less satiating food of carbs and fats and then strip it even further, make it really, really easy to chew, we get rid of the fiber. It's usually one of the first things they do when they go through the ultra processing process. But um, it gets rid of these additional factors that cause us to just inherently slow down how quickly we're actually able to physically consume that food. So we're able to eat a lot more in a shorter amount of time before those satiety cues are actually hitting our brain. Especially when you factor in that most ultra processed foods have essentially zero fiber. You're not getting that benefit of that first 30 minutes or so of feeling more satisfied from your meal while you wait for the protein to kick in. This is why I'm not a big fan of like the various completely ultra processed meals. Like if you were to have like a protein bar or like the ready to drink protein shakes, those are pretty much all entirely ultra processed ingredients. So you're able to eat or drink or just consume those without much chewing very, very, very quickly. And you're also not getting the added benefit of the fiber component. So even though it might have that balance of like different macronutrients that you think should support your goals, it's actually still, just an almost entirely ultra processed food that's making it so you're able to eat so much more than what you actually normally would if that came from mostly whole food or minimally processed foods.
And that's where you kind of run into after you consume, you start with a shake, you consume a lot, and then you're like, oh my God, I'm so full. I didn't realize it because like we got there so fast that by the time, you kind of like your brain has caught up, you're like, oh my God, now I'm way uncomfortable.
Yeah, and, kind of what can happen on the flip side from what I've seen with a lot of my clients is if they do that where they are relying on a lot of these, like, more ultra processed meal replacements that maybe do have more protein, so eventually they should get full and satisfied from it, that they do get over full and it makes them not wanna eat for, like, let's say 8 hours, like 6 to 8 hours, rather than,
Mm,
like, every 4 hours or so. So by the time they are able to eat, now their blood sugar is crashing, and they're
yeah.
just so ravenous that they then are like, "Oh, well, I just need to eat something. I need a bowl of pasta. I need bread. I need mac and cheese. I need crackers," like whatever it is to help get that blood sugar back up because they weren't having that gap of like about 4 to 5 hours. Instead, they were like pushing it further and further because they were so overloaded from the more earlier ultra processed ingredients, and overeating beyond their body's needs then that then they end up having foods that don't support their goals later.
That's a great point. So I'm gonna hit some like rapid fire questions, but before I do that, I want to ask if you could help our listeners build an ideal meal, what would it look like?
So it would
Like kind
always
of
be
the framework.
Yeah. Yeah, it would always be structured around protein, fat, and fiber. It would have to hit each one of those 3 components to be full and satisfying and focus on mostly whole food or minimally processed ingredients. I usually say, like, aiming for about 80% or so of what's on the plate to be minimally processed. Because what people don't realize, or I think a lot of people don't realize, is that processing, isn't necessarily always a bad thing. Like, there are types of
Mhm.
processing. Anytime you chop something, anytime you cook it, anytime you steam it, anytime you're doing anything to food, that is by definition a form of processing, which is why by saying like minimally processed, it's including like the whole foods that you're making at your house. If you're to just eat entirely whole foods, you'd be eating a raw food diet, and that is very not good for the gut, and is very hard to actually get all of your micronutrient needs eating that pattern. So it's kind of like a little aside. But
Mhm.
just to point out that like all processing isn't bad. It's when we get to the ultra processed level and when all the food is ultra processed that it does make it really easy to eat beyond our body's needs. So
Mhm.
it would be that meal would be focused on eating protein, fat, and fiber, really focusing first on the protein component because even though the fiber is very important, like what we just talked about, protein's the anchor. If you don't have that, nothing it doesn't matter how much fiber you eat, you're not going to feel full and satisfied for very long. You're not going to have the micronutrients your body needs. You're not going to keep the muscle that your body needs as well. So, it would be usually in the range of about 30 to 50 grams of protein. So that's like 4 to 6 ounces if you're looking at some type of, like meat, or it'd be like 1.5 cups of cottage cheese, or you could even stir in some protein powder into, like, Greek yogurt, like a cup of Greek yogurt to get you into that threshold so you're not having to eat, like, 2 cups of Greek yogurt, which is a lot of yogurt.
That's a lot of Greek yogurt.
It is a lot
Yogurt.
of Greek yogurt. I love yogurt, but I don't think I can sit and eat 2 cups of it in one sitting. It's a lot of squish. Um, and then once you have that base, then next looking at, like, what your, like, fiber/carbohydrate component is, and this will really depend on your goals. Like, if you are somebody who is looking to achieve a weight loss goal, then really primarily sticking to the low glycemic, high fiber foods would be the goal. If you're somebody who is looking for more of an active or fitness goal, then you do want to incorporate some of those slightly higher glycemic carbs. This is really a sliding scale, just depending on, again, where your goals are at. The higher glycemic you are, really the more active you do need to be to help to balance out the blood sugar spike that can result. And that component, I usually recommend like I mean, it depends. If you're sticking to just the low glycemic, then really eating as much as you want. Like that part is hard to overdo if you're getting it from mostly whole food sources.
Mhm.
So just knowing what that low glycemic category is very helpful. I have, like you mentioned in the book, I have a whole like cheat sheet of the low, medium, high glycemic carbohydrates. And then the fat, I usually recommend between 2 to 4 servings, again, depending on your goal. So a serving would be like a 10-gram serving amount, or like, for example, half an avocado would be a serving, a half a cup of olives. That way you're covering all your bases with all 3 of those. And then the strategy as well, when you actually go to eat your meal, if it is segmented like this and it's not like all put together in like, let's say a smoothie, if you really do struggle with hunger, first eating the protein, making sure it's all gone, like physically gone before you then move on to the fiber and fat component. Because then you allow more time for that hormone to be kicked
Mhm.
in from for satiety by eating the protein first and then moving on to the others.
That's excellent. Thank you so much. And I do think for everybody, like get a cheat sheet because there's so much that we can take out of our guessing when it comes to building a meal, building a plate. And then when we have those, when you have that information and then you can build it from there, it becomes less of a like math project or like this
Mhm.
complicated thing when you just have the framework that we can look at and just like kind of foods that you can pick from on a daily basis.
Like, framing it this way makes it seem like it has to be, like, chicken, vegetable, avocado, like, very, very boring, but that's just really to help understand, like, the different components of the meal. But you can have like, you can have tacos that are following this framework. You can make, different types of pasta dishes. Like, you can make a lot of different foods that taste amazing and that fit your own personal preferences as long as it does follow this framework, and it's really easy to do once you understand, like, what those components are.
I'm glad you said that because I do realize that a lot of people will see that plate and they'll be like, "That's what it needs to look like every day." And it's like, "No, we could chop all that up. We could put it in a dish. We could put some cheese
Yeah.
in there." There's so many different ways that that can be consumed that isn't just like, "We have chicken, we have broccoli." We have,
Yes.
that seems very boring on a daily basis. So you mentioned how much fiber, but I'm gonna do this as part of the rapid fire if anyone wants to take notes during this. So how much fiber should the average woman aim for on a daily basis?
I recommend 10 grams per meal, so about 30 grams per day. I just from working with clients, especially women, I do recommend sticking to meals and not grazing and not having snacks. So viewing it in the 10-gram interval. This is best for helping to regulate blood sugar, for making it easier to shift back into fat burning between meals, easier to prevent cravings, and also most importantly to help promote gut health. So the gut cleaning process in between each of your meals. So by viewing it as rather than a total, but instead like I need to hit 10 at each meal, I found it's
Mhm.
just easier to mentally break up um, so that you aren't like forgetting it later in the day and you're like, oh shoot, I have to hit 30 grams in this dinner.
No.
Yeah, that's like a lot of black beans I have to eat right now. And then you will get the experience of feeling really bloated and not so great.
Mhm, 100%. What's the biggest fiber myth that you hear?
I think the first one that really comes to my mind is that it's, like, just for pooping, that
Yeah,
it's the
it's
only
so
thing you have
true.
to think about, and I think, like, thanks to Metamucil and, like, all the different, those ads that you'll get where it shows, like, a, 80-year-old plus person in the ad, you're like, "Oh, well, fiber is just for people who can't go to the bathroom when they're 80."
Mhm.
But it is actually something that is very important, as we just talked about, for blood sugar regulation and preventing issues later in life. Also for helping to feed good gut bacteria, for a healthy gut, and for making weight loss so much easier. Plus, foods that are fiber rich, like if you actually are getting fiber from food and not a supplement, you're getting some of the most micronutrient dense foods as well. So you're covering all of your nutritional bases that way.
100%. It has gotten that rep too. It did in my house too, that like, "Get your fiber." My mom used to
Yeah.
have the, like, mixing in, and she's like, "I gotta get my fiber."
Yeah.
So it just but prior to, diving into health and fitness, like, it had that, kind of image for me as well, and I think for a
Yeah.
lot of people, they have gotten that image kind of stuck in their mind of like,
Yeah, I mean, it
"Well, I
does
don't
work
need
for that
fiber."
too, but it's not the only thing it does.
Not the only thing. It can help move things along, but it's not the only thing it does.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, you.
Thanks for getting in touch with the Thick Thighs Save Lives podcast.
We love your questions and adore hearing from you.
Leave us a hello,
A burning question,
feedback.
or anything else you want to share with us on the podcast.
We will play your message live on air if we can.
Thanks for being an amazing friend. Stay safe and moving. Is snacking necessary?
Uh, I would say the only time snacking can be useful is if somebody is highly athletic, like they're exercising so much, they're an athlete, they have a hard time fitting enough food at each of their meals, or if they're like pregnant or breastfeeding in these states where it's just physically very, very hard to eat enough at just your regular meals to suit your body's needs and your endeavors. That is a time when snacking is helpful. Beyond that, there's pretty much no other use case that I can think of that snacking is actually better than the alternative of having 3 full satisfying meals because it shuts off a very important daily practice of, gut cleaning that our body needs every day, every time we snack, because inherently, if you're snacking, you're eating, like, every 2 hours, and you're not eating, like, every 4 to 5 hours, and it takes 3.5 or about 3 hours and 45 minutes for our gut cleaning process to actually clean itself out to run a full cycle, and we need to be fasted the whole time or just not eating rather the whole time during that process to go through that whole cleaning cycle. So when we snack, we disrupt it, and that's when we can fall into issues like the, gut bacteria overgrowing in the wrong places, having, inflammation in the gut because we're not able to clean it out, or issues like SIBO. So for most people, not snacking and sticking to actually well-structured, full, and satisfying 3 meals is a much better approach.
Excellent. Yeah, totally agree. I'm glad you said, pregnant or breastfeeding too, breastfeeding, you cannot there was not enough food that I could
Yeah.
consume on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm not much of a, generally in my life a snacker, and I was just like, "There is not enough food that I can
Yeah.
consume." Like, I had crackers in my car.
Yeah.
It was very weird.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is a very nutritionally demanding time. So we have to, this is where like nutrition really is not a one size fits all. It's same thing with different foods. Like even us talking about ultra processed foods and how they are so not great. There is a use case even for the most ultra processed foods. Like if you are in the hospital and you need tube feeding, you can't eat a chicken breast. Like you
Yeah.
need to have the most ultra processed, easiest to break down version. And that's like more of an extreme example, but there are for all of these different tools a time and a place. And so just knowing when or like what you're currently working towards, that even changes during different life cycles, like during different goals you might have. If you are trying to achieve a weight loss goal, or if you're maintenance, or if you're trying to increase muscle, or maybe you are pregnant, like there are all these different factors that our body is constantly changing and has different demands. It's not like one tool is good or one tool is bad. It's just good or bad for the right or wrong situation.
Mhm. Then you hit perimenopause, menopause, and there's a whole
Right.
nother a whole nother level. What's one fiber-rich food almost everyone should eat more of?
I My favorite is chia seeds because it is so dang
So
easy
easy.
to add in, and, it's also a good source of healthy fats, like omega-3 fats. There's been quite a bit of research coming out on how it can be helpful for reducing, visceral fat. It's, such a dense way to get fiber as well, where it's almost essentially on par with just, like, taking a supplement because it is so dense. There's a lot of nutritional benefits behind it outside of just the fiber itself, and it is just so easy.
That's a great one. That's not one that I would've thought of. It's just not one of the, like, kind of staples when you think about fiber, but, I think that's probably because it is so easy, like, you can just toss it in anything. Like,
Yeah,
for me, like, we toss it in smoothies, we toss it in our yogurt, we toss it in, like, literally everything. It was one of the first, as my son started eating foods, we put it in all of the yogurt, which ended up all over
yeah.
his face and everything, but it was like, yeah, one of his first things was, like, with adding in some chia seeds.
Yeah, I will also say, because I know chia seeds for some people might seem like a little bit of a foreign one, like if they aren't used to adding that in, one that is very accessible, pretty inexpensive, and also still nutrient dense is black beans. That
Mhm.
is one that I think is an underutilized food for a lot of people because it can be really, really cheap to buy and make. And
Mhm.
it can go with a lot of different meals. Like, you don't have to sneak it into things. It can actually be a feature that tastes great too, with your meal. So that was actually something that during my postpartum with my second baby, that I did eat quite a bit of because it was really helpful for reducing hunger and it tastes great in so many different things.
Yeah, that's a great one, and it is definitely very accessible. So I have a couple questions from the community. What's one sign that someone isn't eating enough? And then on the flip side of that, well, I'll get to the next one. What's one sign that people can look for that they're not eating enough?
I would say is feeling hungry. Like, if you find that you're eating enough protein, like you truly are eating enough protein, you've weighed and figured all of that out, and you're like, okay, I know I'm hitting my protein, but I'm still hungry, then you could be missing fiber because it is part of that trio of protein, fat, and fiber. And if we're missing any one of those, then you could possibly feel hungry.
Excellent. And what's one sign that someone is eating too much of and I'm just gonna Eric Bunny this, of the wrong foods?
You mean just wrong foods in general, like wrong fibers?
Yeah, just wrong foods in general. This is from the community, but I think what she's getting at is, like not enough maybe whole foods and just kind of like I'm eating enough during the day, but what's one sign that I'm not getting the right foods?
Yeah, hungry within 2 hours, I would say is a very big sign because that's usually, a threshold. Like, if you can make it beyond 2 hours, usually you're going to feel satisfied for about 4. 2 hours is like that tipping point for a lot of people where if they've eaten just enough of the protein and like the fat and maybe even fiber, they could like with a protein bar, for example, you could sneak into that 2 hour territory and feel satisfied, but then it starts to like tank down and you need something to eat. So if you are able to make it to 4 hours without having to white knuckle it and you just feel like good, then you probably have eaten enough of the right foods. If not, if you're at that 2 hour territory and you feel like you do need to white knuckle it to get to four, then you probably have not eaten enough of the right things.
That's a great point. Having that 2-hour mark too is just like, can be really helpful for people to take just kind of a pulse on their diet of the type of foods that they're consuming during those meals. And, just getting a pulse of like, I felt like I ate enough at that time, but I hit the 2-hour mark and I'm starving again. Like we can look back at what that meal was and try and figure out what was missing in there.
Yeah, and even on that same note, seeing how you feel at 2 hours, if you start to feel like some of those symptoms of low blood sugar, so like the mood swingy, the like shaky feeling, if you are feeling like you're very irritable for no reason, or you're suddenly
Mhm.
feeling really down for no reason, all of that could be a big sign that your blood sugar is crashing, which would be a sign that you probably ate too much of like the high glycemic carbs that could have caused a big blood sugar spike.
Excellent. What's one of the just last one, what's one of the simple changes that listeners could make today that would have the biggest impact on just overall improving their diet or just getting them more fiber in their daily intake?
So do you mean sorry, I'm just clarifying, like, in general, a good like, what is the number one or in relation to fiber?
What's just the number one in general that they could make today?
Even with all our talk about fiber, I still think so many women are under consuming protein and
I
not
know.
consuming the right type
Mm,
specifically because it is, like, with the era of, protein just being very popular again, we also see a lot of snack food items that are just like so quote packed with protein. And so it's really easy to reach for the wrong types of proteins that aren't going to support your goals. So instead, like it just focusing it back to the at least primarily whole or minimally processed proteins and getting it from high quality sources, high diets, easy to digest sources, things like Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, eggs, chicken, beef, fish, like all, and then if you're plant based, like tempeh, just knowing what those high quality sources are and centering your meal around that and then supporting it with fiber, in itself can solve like 85% of different weight loss and wellness goals.
that's so good. I totally agree with you. I think that we have had a big shift onto protein, but it still seems to, I mean, when we think about like what 30 grams of protein looks like, or like, what 10 grams of fiber looks like per meal, um, you know, it's hard to wrap a lot of women's heads around if you've been severely under eating those throughout like overall your day. Like I know a lot of women, like I've looked at their daily intake and been like, you're eating 30 grams total.
Yeah.
Like through the
Mhm.
whole day. Like that's not
Mhm.
just per meal. Like that is just total. And just trying to kind of figure out like, yeah, of course you're hungry, at the 2-hour mark, or of course you're feeling these like blood sugar drops, and then maybe you have another layer in there where you're perimenopause or menopausal, and then that's another layer of hormonal imbalance, along with the fact that we have some spikes, some drops, and we're kind of all over the place when it comes
Yeah.
to consumption.
Yeah. I think logically, like we know in our head that protein is important and we know that it's very helpful. And even just like us being aware of that, it might make us think like some of the foods that we normally consume have protein in it and we don't really make the same changes to the meal that we really should to help increase the protein because it is kind of a not a drastic shift, but it does require a significant reordering of your meal for some people. I was a vegetarian growing up. I grew up eating very, very high carb. So I'm aware of like how this can be a pretty big shift in what your plate can look like. But it does require actually making that shift of putting that emphasis onto the high quality source of protein and eating it up and truly understanding what that looks like to eat enough protein to actually see the benefits of it.
Absolutely. Autumn, this has been an extremely insightful conversation. I do want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to check out your book, first of all, and know where to find it. But where can they hear more from you if they want to hear just more about the overall nutrition, hear more about the importance of fiber? Where can they hear more from you?
Yeah, I am mostly on YouTube, so it's just Autumn Bates on YouTube, so Autumn and then Bates, Bates. I have, I think at this point, like 1,100 videos over the past, like, 9 years, so there's a lot to explore. And then I have my, if you're more of, like, a reader, I do have my blog, so that's Autumn L Nutrition, Autumn, ELLE nutrition.com. So a lot of great, like, different recipes that are tasty, that actually do incorporate this protein, fat, and fiber balance. And, then my book, like, How to Eat, or How to Eat, not like How to Eat, but actually How to Eat.
How to
Uh,
eat.
yeah. It really breaks this down. I'm actually so proud of this book because it's what I wish that I actually had when I was in school for nutrition, because it does break down and distill so much of the science of what you actually need to eat, not just what, but also, like, literally how to eat it, like, not
Yeah.
snacking and having those 3 meals, why that's important, how to actually do it, what to look out for, like, what we're talking about, if you might have overeaten on the wrong things or undereaten, like, all these different signs your body is telling you. So you don't have to be counting every calorie or tracking everything, but you can actually structure your meals in a way that supports your goals, tastes great, and is easy to do. So it's pretty easy to find as well. You can buy it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, any bookstore, I believe. So it's just How to Eat and by Autumn Bates.
Amazing. And congrats on the book and just like all the amazing work that you're doing because I agree like this would be the just the easy guide to kind of figure out like what are you supposed to be eating and there's a bunch of science behind it. So it's not just like, oh, make sure to get your detox something something. Like there's a really lot of good foods that are tasty that can support, a healthy diet that makes you feel good and that
Mhm.
make sure you're getting in a bunch of whole foods and all together. So thank you for the work that you're doing and coming on with us today because this has been extremely insightful and helpful for everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. And guys, don't forget to check her out and definitely get her book. I will. I love a cheat sheet because when I'm cooking, I don't know, like I just sometimes like check out and like just to have something right there to just be like, and we add this. Like
Mhm,
I know
yes.
I'm gonna have it in my house, or even when you're going grocery shopping, you're like, I'm gonna make sure I get these 5 things. Like it just makes life so much simpler when you have just like something physical there that you can draw from and you don't have to just store these in your
Yeah,
memory of like endless things that you need to do and keep track of.
exactly. We already have, especially as moms, if you're a mom, you already have enough going on.
You're up here, like you're
Yeah.
done. There's not one more thing that you
Yes.
could list on. So, like, here we have a cheat sheet just for you. Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you.